to be determinedly attentive.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I think you're voluntarily minimizing the valuable inputs to the judgment process. Do you want to talk about what you mean by determinedly, or I guess might have been Eric, I'm not sure. Whoever said be determinedly attentive.
I don't think that specific phrase actually appears, but I think it's what Eric told me, and it was actually his first piece of advice when I still can't believe I asked him this question. I asked him, what piece of advice he has for me, what the big, most important thing is in poker. The reason I can't believe I ask it is it's obviously, that's the question everyone asks him, and it's just so incredibly obvious. But his answer was incredible. His answer was pay attention. That's it, just those 2 words. And and it seemed, pretty obvious, okay, pay attention. But the more I learned about the game and the deeper I went and the more I worked with Eric, the more I realized just how much that basically underlies everything. Because so many people at the poker table are just distracted. They only pay attention to the hand they're in, and they're not even really paying attention. They already know what they want to do. They already have all these things in their minds, and they're not really taking it all in. And especially when they're not in a hand, they're on their phone, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're not following along. And the way that Eric plays is completely different. He is just 100% present. He is observing everyone. He is taking in all of the information, all of the available inputs. And it's funny, it's actually a theme that was one of the underlying themes of Mastermind, my first book, because it's this idea of mindfulness and of mindful presence. And so it's funny how, in a way, kind of everything is coming full circle in poker. And I realized that this is something that I'd been thinking about for a very long time, but that really, if you're going to succeed, if you want to succeed at poker, it is so essential. And I think not just poker, if you want to succeed in life, it's just so essential to be present and to actually be aware of everything that's happening. Otherwise, how are you going to learn? How are you going to adjust? How are you going to improve? You're not.
Yeah. The second part of that is, I do believe this is in the book. I hope it was active open-mindedness.
Mhm.
And to me, that means there's never actually a default decision, only deliberation.
Yes.
Um, so how does that work in terms of
Yeah.
your decision, your judgment?
So that actually also comes from Eric. One of the phrases that he told me once that really stayed with me, even though it was very early on in our working together, probably one of the first month, second month, he said something and it just really, once again, stuck with me. And what he said was less certainty, more inquiry.
Yeah,
And that phrase, it's just so beautiful, it's so pithy, it's so perfect. I mean, basically, there it is, it encapsulates everything, and what he meant by that was, you can never know everything. I mean, life is uncertain, decisions are uncertain, you will never have all of the information, ever, it's not possible. That in any decision, 100% does not exist if you're talking about real life, and especially in poker. I mean, it's a game of incomplete information, and so,
yeah,
when you feel like you're certain, when you feel like you know what to do, and when you're really, really sure about that, you close the door to being creative, you close the door to learning, you close the door to growing and to evolving. And so what he wanted me to focus on was the process of inquiry, the thought process, actually thinking through everything. And so it was very interesting, especially in the beginning. I would always want him to give me very concrete advice. How do I play this hand? What am I supposed to do here? Do I fold? Do I raise? Do I call? What do I do? And he would always say, well, let's think through it. Here are all, what are the arguments for this? What are the arguments for that? What are the arguments for the other? And he never gave me an answer. And I'd get so frustrated. I would just basically want to scream at him, just tell me what to do with this hand. And he didn't, it's not that he was being, you know, that he was trying to string me along. It's that he really believes that there's no answer. He can't tell me how to play this hand. How to play this hand is going to change from moment to moment depending on all of the information. And if I have that inquiring mindset, if I focus on the process and not on this is what to do, that's how I'm going to become a great player, a great thinker, a great decision maker.
Yeah, that's when I read that about the inquiry, I immediately was like, oh, that's risk. The greater the risk, the more that you try to understand everything it is about the context of that risk. The other thing about approach, which is really important, and everybody thinks they can do it and they can't, is to be non-attached and dispassionate in your judgment. Um, you know, if you are collecting the information, being determinedly attentive or paying attention, and if you are actively open-minded, then it leads on that you should be able to make judgments in a non-attached way. Is that right?
Not necessarily, no. I think that non-attachment has to do with emotion. And it is so easy, even if you're attentive, even if you're thinking, that does not preclude being emotional. You can still be incredibly emotional. You can be someone who gets angry while paying attention and thinking through your decision. And if you're not aware of your own emotions, if you don't have that kind of self awareness, if you don't know how to manage it, if you don't have those tools, then you're going to let that seep into your inquiry, let that seep into your decision making process, and you're not going to realize it. And that happens to everyone. One thing that I've learned is every single person goes on what is called in poker tilt, which means
Tilt.
lets emotions seep into their decision making process. And this is true of Eric. This is true of me. I will defy you if you say there's one person who never tilts. Not true, because everyone is human. And even if you're a psychopath, you're going to go on tilt at some point because psychopaths are very capable of getting angry. And that that can really hurt you at the poker table. The reason, by the way, that I say psychopaths is they don't process emotion in the same way that
Right.
other people
Right.
do, non-psychopaths, but even still, they would go on tilt. In any case, so I think that that's actually that non-attachment is a separate skill that you have to cultivate, that you have to learn, and it starts with actually also paying attention, but in a different way, paying attention to yourself and learning to constantly pay attention to yourself, to what you're thinking, to why you're thinking it, to how you're feeling, to how you respond to certain things, to what your emotional triggers are, and then you are able to say, okay, I'm experiencing all of this because, by the way, paying attention to it doesn't mean you're going to stop experiencing it, but at least you'll be able to discount it and remove it from the decision process to the best of your abilities.
Yeah. So in my little subgrouping in my little brain, I put emotions as part of perspective,
hmm I think
and
emotions are
I
part of
think,
everything, honestly. I think that that's something that
yeah,
actually
yeah,
you can't.
yeah,
A lot of these themes, I love your groupings, by the way. I think they're really interesting and thought provoking. But I do think that a lot of these things, like attention, like emotion, really transcend themes, and they parts of them are in all of them, right?
yeah.
Because
I agree with
there's
that.
something that's actually so fundamental to being human and to making decisions in a human way.
So I'm going to push back
Yeah,
on
please
that
do.
in particular because you gave me the ammo to do this, and the ammo that you gave me is that in kind of doing the the self inventory,
hmm
that when you realize that your emotions are not part of the rational decision
hmm
process, at that moment you dismiss them, right? Because then you're no longer playing at the level of your efficient curve.
So yes and no. Some emotions, yes, but other emotions, they are hot and visceral enough that you're actually incapable of dismissing them. You can realize that someone has really pissed you off. This has happened to me. I've seen it happening, has really gotten under your skin, and you are angry. I mean, I've been called a cunt at the table. I've been propositioned. People have, I mean, I've been called it all. Cunt isn't even the worst of it. And it gets to me and I can rationally say, okay, I am going to dismiss this, but hell no. I mean, that really just, that it's impossible. Of course it's going to affect me. I'm human, and I know that.
Yeah.
And I just at that point, all I can do actually in those types of situations, what I've learned is the best thing to do, even though I'm a tournament player, so I'm actually not allowed to just randomly get up and leave. I get up and leave, and I actually miss hands. I've sometimes missed a lot of hands because I know that I can't think rationally at that moment. That's not me being able to dismiss the emotion. So let me push
Yeah.
back to your pushing back. Recognizing the
Yeah.
emotion
Yeah. Well, we,
only works with emotions that have not gotten to that point. But
yes.
unless you're able to prevent them getting from that point, which you can't always do, you can do your best. This is kind of the element of control what you can and really try to do your best, but also I think one of the most important things of a successful decision maker and a successful poker player is to recognize your limitations, to know when your best just ain't going to cut it.